Welcome everyone back to Weekly Weather Updates, and for the first video today we're going to have a look at the latest on Hurricane Henri, which is about to make landfall over the next few hours as either a Category 1 hurricane or a very strong tropical storm across the northeastern parts of the United States. It's going to bring devastating amounts of rain, very strong winds, and potentially a very high storm surge. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and do remember to follow me on Twitter as well. The link is in the description. I'll also have my UK forecast out in a few hours, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But you can see at the moment on the latest radar, you can see where Storm Henri is centred just to the southeast of Long Island, and it is moving across sort of a northwesterly track into Long Island. And you can see at the moment it's got quite a large area of rain associated with the storm. Now the winds will only really be very, very strong around this centre, towards the core of the storm. That's where we see hurricane force winds, and tropical storm force winds will probably be a bit more widespread than this. But you can see why there is still devastating impacts potentially for even areas like New York down to Philadelphia, as we are still seeing some very, very strong winds. And some very, very heavy rain. We've already seen pictures of flooding in New York City, as we saw some thunderstorms on the outer bands of the storm move through, and we're going to see more and more rain spread in over the next few hours as this storm does make landfall. You can see it's got a very, very intense core at the moment around its eye. That's not got a sort of photogenic eye. It's not particularly well structured around its centre, as it is only a Category 1 storm. But because it's impacting the northeast, well, we've got a lot of population, a lot of built-up areas, and a lot of people close to the ocean, and low-lying areas as well. Even a Category 1 storm, like we saw with Hurricane Sandy many years ago, can cause absolute devastation with a lot of economic impacts. So I wouldn't be surprised if we did see a lot of severe weather from this storm. Luckily, it is making landfall a little bit further eastwards than it could have only a day or so ago, where there was a potential within some of the ensemble tracks that it was going to head for New York City. Now it's going to be likely heading a bit further eastwards along Long Island, but this could also mean there's more devastating impacts from flooding for these areas, because they're low-lying, very close to the ocean, and you can see the amount of area that's quite low-lying, and we could be seeing some flooding within that. I do pray that we don't see anything too significant. If we do firstly also have a look at the past 24-hour precipitation totals, which gives a good indication. You can see the amount of rain that's fallen over New York, down into Philadelphia at the moment. Potentially up to 100, 120, 140 millimetres of rain has fallen in a few areas on the outer bands of the storm, as we've seen intense thunderstorms peppering these areas, and those rainfall totals are only going to increase. Now, some would say it's not being directly impacting New York and these areas, but you can see the amount of rain that has fallen in some of these areas. They can't cope with that amount of rain, and there could be some flooding around. And of course, I've already said we've already seen images of flooding in parts of Manhattan as well. But these rainfall totals are just going to tot up. I do pray that the consequences are not as bad as they are looking like on the forecast. If we do switch back to the radar, and we do add on the hurricane track from Hurricane Henri, it might take a little bit of time to load, as it's putting up quite a bit of extra imagery on the screen. So yeah, here we can see you've got the track of the storm at the moment. Hurricane strength winds currently Category 1 heading inland, but as it makes landfall across Long Island, into parts of Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, then it is likely to downgrade to a tropical storm before going into depression, slowly sort of petering away. But it's going to be making very slow progress as it moves northwards. It's going to become to almost a standstill as it makes landfall. I've heard reports that they're forecasting at the moment between 5 and 6 knots northward speed, which is very, very slow for a hurricane, especially in the northeast. And it could provide devastating impacts, because it can mean you sort of eye wall where the heaviest rain and strongest winds last many, many hours, whereas with the faster moving hurricane, where it moves at 15 miles per hour, or sort of 10 to 15 knots, it's only there for an hour or two. And these sort of time frames can be the difference between 3 or 4 inches of rain or 7, 8, 9 inches of rain, and that can add to the flooding. But we're also looking at storm surge, and you can see also within this graphic we've got a widespread amount of warnings. These are all various warnings. I won't go into detail with them, but they're all warnings issued by the local areas, and you can see wide spread local warnings all the way moving up to Nova Scotia. Probably for like 3 or 4 or 5 days time, but hopefully by that stage it is significantly downgraded. But you can see it is likely to be a pretty devastating storm for some, and I do pray, of course, that the forecasts are wrong. This one time where I do want to be wrong with my forecasts and what the weather models are showing, and I really do hope that this storm does significantly downgrade. As one positive that I did highlight in my video yesterday is that the storm is now moving into colder water, and it should slowly decrease in strength, or at least it shouldn't strengthen as it moves into cooler water, as it has now exited the Gulf Stream. The Gulf Stream is few tens, maybe hundreds of miles further southwards now. It has moved out of the Gulf Stream over the course of tonight, and it is 6 a.m. local time in New York, so people are going to be waking up in a few hours' time to very heavy rain, strong winds, and potentially a storm surge. But as it downgrades this storm to even to a tropical storm, there's still going to be a lot of heavy rain, still going to be very strong winds, and the storm surge will take some time to subside. So, yeah, I'll just, again, pray that it isn't as significant as we are potentially seeing at the moment. If we do go to the weather nerds, this gives us another detailed radar, and you can see at the moment where it's positioned with its outer band. It's sort of making landfall now with significant rain. Also want to have a look at this as we can go to base velocity, which is normally used to forecast tornadoes, because you can see the green and the red colours. This basically shows from the direction the radar is facing, it shows you what way the cloud and the precipitation is moving. So you can see here it indicates basically where there is rotation, and you see a very strong rotation in the storm, and it gives an idea of where the centre is down to the southeast here. And it's normally used to indicate tornadoes on a very localised scale. You can see these colour changes and indicates rotation within a storm, but you can see this on a very large scale with strong rotation still taking place. Still shows you the strength within this storm, and again, I do pray that it is nowhere near as significant as it could potentially be from the forecasts. If we also have a look at the latest infrared, you can see where the highest cloud tops are. This is what infrared show us, where the highest cloud tops are, and you can see at the moment it is quite far from landfall, the centre of the storm, where we do still have deep convection taking place. Elsewhere, you can see there is still some strong convection heading inland, where we've seen the heavier rain, but at the moment we still have probably the worst to come for some regions, as this does slowly move northwestwards into parts of the United States. But it hopefully should slowly downgrade as it reaches land. If we do finally have a look at the National Hurricane Service, just to see what their latest update is, and you can see Hurricane Henri currently 75 miles per hour, so that is hurricane strength, category 1. You can see it is moving 80 miles an hour or 16 knots northwards at the moment, but it is going to grind to a halt just as it makes landfall to around 5-6 knots, or sort of 6-7 miles per hour. So yeah, not looking great in terms of rainfall amounts as well. If we do go through to its warning cone, again, we saw this on Weather Channel, but you can see again for a more zoomed out image, it's going to decrease in strength quite rapidly as it reaches land. So by Monday, it should be a tropical depression, and it should be a post-tropical depression by Monday afternoon into sort of Tuesday, and it should slowly diminish away. If you have a look at its wind history, you can see it's got a wide area of tropical storm winds, and hurricane force winds are mainly, of course, in its centre. So that's why big areas could be affected by tropical storm winds. It isn't getting to parts of New York, potentially, but it's really where that centre core moves through. It's where we're going to see the strongest winds. If we have a look at the peak surge, you can see it hasn't really changed. Yes, say 3 to 5 feet, quite possible widely. Again, a lot of low-lying areas, so we could see some potential disruption, even to New York, into parts Manhattan, we could see 2 to 4, maybe 1 to 3 feet, which could flood a few areas. And again, I do hope the necessary precautions have been taken in these areas, and I do suspect they have. As I've heard, there are mandatory evacuations going on in some regions, and I just hope the authorities have got it right, where we're going to see the heaviest rain and strongest storm surge. If we have a look at the US rainfall predictions, you can see, even though the storm is, you can see where its main track is going to be, through Long Island and parts of Connecticut, Rhode Island, etc. You can see there's going to be a wide rain area. 6, maybe 10 inches of rain widely across New York, into parts of Connecticut, as well, as parts of New Jersey as well. Seeing a lot of rain. You can see towards Philadelphia and just to the south of Manhattan. Not too much more rain is predicted, as that band is going to move northwards. So it does look like the worst has come for areas of Pennsylvania, and just that sort of area. So hopefully it does clear over the next few hours, but it's still looking pretty devastating further northeast, with still a lot of rain to come. For UK terms, because we normally do our things in millimetres, that 10 inches of rain, it's about 250 millimetres of rain, which is about 3/4 of London's annual rainfall. We get around, I think, 300 to 400 millimetres of rain a year. So it's absolutely devastating. And just think, with some of the heavy thunderstorms we saw a few weeks ago, towards the end of July, early August, we saw in a few areas of London, we saw 100 millimetres in a few hours. These areas are going to be seeing double that. Luckily, it will be more over sort of 12 hours or so, but still could still be some devastating flooding within these regions. And if we do finally have a look at the flash flooding potential, hasn't really changed too much, of course, since yesterday's forecast. Still a moderate to high chance of flash flooding in that large area that's going to be seeing 6 to 10 inches of rain. And again, I do hope these forecasts are over-exaggerating it, and this storm does disintegrate a lot quicker than it is looking like, and it has been forecasted to. So yeah, I do pray for everyone out there that they are all right out there, and they've taken the necessary precautions, and they do stay safe out there. It is looking like this could be the first hurricane landfall in this specific region for 30 years. We saw, of course, Hurricane Sandy, but that was further southwards and westwards. But it does look like for the first 30 years we're going to see a hurricane make landfall in this area, and I do hope this doesn't happen again for many years to come, and I do hope this storm is nowhere near as severe as it is looking like at the moment. So anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.